So hello everybody, my name is Allison Swaggerts, and I'm here to discuss what I like to call the future of FRAML, one platform, one view of financial crime. So today I'm going to be showcasing how we can integrate fraud and anti-money laundering case investigations to achieve a holistic and singular view of financial crime across our entire enterprise. And then how we can enhance those decision-making capabilities with automated generative AI integration. So I'm excited to share this with you today. For some background, I am our compliance product marketing manager. I started at SAS 5 years ago on the fraud side in a tech role, and then transitioned to working on our compliance portfolio about 2 years ago. All right, so first I want to touch on some challenges that we're seeing in the banking space across fraud and anti-money laundering. So between escalating financial crime threats and this era of digital acceleration, that's really opened the door to more complex fraud and money laundering schemes, to fragmented systems and data sources that fail to scale across lines of business. Effectively managing financial crime has become more complex year after year. Now, when we add to that an escalating regulatory environment and inefficient processes, that's really going to leave our financial institutions struggling to adapt and then scrambling to stay on track. And then this challenge only grows when we, as regulatory agencies, are increasingly encouraging the adoption of advanced technologies like AI and machine learning to improve your investigations and reporting and decisioning outcomes. So we have all these challenges, right? What do we do with this? How do we actually begin to address and break down these barriers that we're seeing? And that's where we come in. So I've deployed SAS fraud decisioning for application, identity, and payments fraud use cases, and then SAS anti-money laundering for customer due diligence and transaction monitoring, all onto a single platform. And when we deploy these technologies onto a single platform, we can begin to break down some of these operational silos and address some of the challenges that our financial institutions are facing. So to level set a little bit first, let's ground ourselves in what we mean when we say SAS fraud decisioning. So at its core, SAS fraud decisioning is a cloud-native, real-time solution to detect and prevent fraud across application and identity and payments fraud use cases. So the core decisioning layer is where our rules and models come together to score transactions and execute decisions, whether that be in real time or in batch. Then supporting that is a built-in orchestration layer where SAS will handle the heavy lifting of ingesting your data and formatting it across multiple sources and transforming it and enriching it so that it's decision ready. Then those decisions are enhanced through advanced analytics, so using machine learning, AI, and impact analysis to identify patterns and optimize performance, and then continually improve our outcomes. When risk is detected, then alerts will flow into our alert triage and case management tool, and this is where alerts are intelligently prioritized and visualized and investigated. And then lastly, SAS fraud decisioning comes with out-of-the-box IP that covers debit and credit card fraud use cases, payments fraud use cases, and application fraud. So now, on the other hand, we turn to SAS anti-money laundering. SAS anti-money laundering is a solution that's been designed to detect and prevent complex financial crimes like money laundering and terrorist financing. And so we'll bring together transaction monitoring, customer due diligence, case management, and regulatory reporting all onto a single platform. So your teams aren't working across disconnected silos or tools. And so from capturing data to filing regulatory reports, it will break down your financial crime risk management silos, streamline AML operations, and help meet all of your compliance-related requirements. At the analytical core, SAS is going to enable institutions to go beyond simple transactions. So by using advanced entity resolution and network generation, we can uncover hidden relationships and identify indirect risks that surface risks that might not be detected with a traditional rules-based approach. So now we're going to put the pieces together, right? How do we take these two systems? How do we take all these tools, and what does our data flow look like? So our source data is going to come in. Think things like our customer and account data, and this can be processed in either batch or in real time. Now on the real-time side, starting at the top right here, our data is then processed through an orchestration layer to format the data into the format that it needs, where it is then pushed into our real-time detection engine. Now the real-time detection engine is the engine that's used by SAS fraud decisioning. Some alerts will be generated and then processed in real time in their short form alert triage tool. And then any alerts that need a longer form case or investigation will be pushed into our alert and case management tool. Now similarly, on the batch side, looking at our bottom right-hand side, left-hand side, We have the batch data coming in that is then pushed through our anti-money laundering data model, where it is then pushed into our batch detection engine, and then any anti-money laundering or customer due diligence alerts are then going to be pushed into our same alert and case management tool. Now, this is where I'll be spending time in the demo today, is investigating alerts that have been generated from a fraud and money laundering perspective, and then investigating those, and the outcome of those investigations will be business decisions. So whether that be the filing of a suspicious activity report, a payment hold, a payment release, a debanking of a customer, whatever that may look like. And then lastly, the output of those decisions that we make feed into our analytic environments, which then loop back into our detection engines to further enhance those outcomes. So we have a feedback loop that's going to consistently improve our cycle, our decisions that we're making. So now we're going to go into the demo. All right, so we're starting here in SAS Visual Investigator. This is our alert and case management tool, like I mentioned. So from an investigator's point of view, we want to accomplish three things. We want to understand what alerts have been fired in our system, why they have been fired, and then complete any tasks that are needed to effectively and most importantly, accurately disposition these alerts. So on the alert summary page here, we can see the three strategies that we have. So the strategies are going to be groupings of our alerts, and we have strategies for high-risk customers, for fraud, and for AML transaction monitoring. We're going to start in our transaction monitoring strategy. And here we can see the list of all the alerts that we have in this strategy. We have the alert score, which tells us the relative weight or importance of that alert, and then some basic information. And I'm going to start with this highest score alert for our customer Len. So on our alert details page, we have some basic information about the alert, like the score, the queue. Take note of this alert activity summary tab. I'm going to come back to this later, but in the meantime, we're going to look at our scorecard. What the scorecard is doing is it's telling us all of the scenarios that have contributed to the generation of this alert. So we have scenarios that are tied to both our customer and our account level. So at the account level, we have a scenario ATM usage in multiple states. So we've had 5 ATM transactions that have occurred across 2 different states. On the customer level, we have rapid cash or wire deposits followed by a large withdrawal. So we have $6.2 million in credit on this account, followed by shortly after this, a debit of $4 million. And then we have foreign wire activity. We have 7 foreign wires that have occurred on this account or on this customer. If we go to our alert activity tab, we can see those same scenarios. So if I click foreign wire activity, then I can actually see all of the transactions that are on this account, and the ones that are flagged in red are the ones that were triggered by that specific scenario. So you see we have 7 high-value international wire transactions that have occurred. That's concerning to us, right? And we want to use this as a foundation for trying to understand what else is happening with this customer, with this account, and why this is concerning to us. So I'm going to jump over to our customer details tab so I can try to understand who this customer is, what's happening, get a bigger picture of who Len is. So Len is a US citizen. We have his phone numbers listed here. His marital status is single. He is a politically exposed person, and he has an annual income of around $92,000. If we jump to our address tab, we can see he has 2 addresses. We have a street address and a mailing address. And then we also have an interactive map that when the Wi-Fi is not terrible, it will load, and then you can interact with this and kind of see what's moving on here. And then I'm going to jump over into our related items tab. So our related items is going to show us any entity that is related directly to our customer. So this can be an address, this can be accounts, this can be alerts, this can be other customers. And so what we see here is we have one account tied to Len, of which Len is the primary owner of this account. So this was the account that had scenarios flagged in the alert as well. We have 2 addresses tied to the alert. Those are the 2 addresses we saw before, his street address and mailing address. And then we actually have 3 alerts that are tied directly to this customer. We have a CDD or a high-risk customer alert, we have a fraud alert, and a transaction monitoring alert. Now at this point, what I want to do is use our workspaces and use network analytics to try to understand what's happening. So the workspaces allow us to allow the network to grow with our data so that we can see what data is related directly to this customer, how it is linked to the other data in our network, and then use the workspace to explore that interactively. So I'm going to jump over to this workspace here. And I'm going to start by selecting our nodes. So we have a node for our AML transaction monitoring alert. That's the alert that we originally opened. And then our node for our customer Len. And I'm going to expand these links by one level here. When I do this, I have a lot of movement that's happening. So we have the accounts that Len is the primary owner of. We saw that on the related items. We have the 2 addresses tied to Len, his street address and mailing address. We have the device that Len is using to send transactions and send payments. And then we have our 3 alerts, our AML transaction monitoring alert, our CDD high-risk customer alert, and our fraud alert. Now, we started with the AML alert. We've seen the scenarios. We haven't looked at the other 2 alerts yet. So I'm going to start with our CDD, or high-risk customer alert. And if I open this up and then go to our scorecard, I can see that we have the scenario that has a score of 500 is an individual automatic high-risk indicator of a PEP, or politically exposed person. Now, for some banks, for some institutions, being a politically exposed person is reason enough not to bank with that customer. For our use case, we don't have that, we're less risk averse than that, right? We're okay with having a PEP, so we're okay with this, but now we understand who Len is, right? He is a high-risk customer because he's a PEP, but I'm fine with that, so let's move on. Now let's go to our fraud alert. When I open up the fraud alert and then go to our scorecard again, we see the 2 highest scoring scenarios are 1 for the customer level with multiple device users. So we have 3 users that have been linked into a single device used in a high-risk payment. And then we have a scenario tied to the account about a mule account. And so this is saying the customer has transacted with 4 distinct third parties with a total amount of $38,000. Now those 2 things are concerning to us, right? We have high scores on multiple device users and high scores on a potential mule account. So we want to go back to our network and try to understand what's happening with the device, who else is using that device, and then what's happening with our account, right? Do we have suspicious transactions that are tied to this account indicating a potential mule? So I'm going to come back to our network again, and I'm going to start at the device. So I click on this, I can see some basic information about the device. So we have the IP address associated with the device model, it's an iPhone, the browser that's being used, the latitude and longitude tied to this device's last usage. And if I expand our nodes again on here, then I've got a lot happening. So first I see that not only is this device, we can see that the users that are using this device is a Michael and a Mike Jakimick. So Len, Michael, and Mike all have access to the same device. But not only that, but Michael and Mike also have access to the account that Len is the primary owner of. So what this has done is this has showed us not only do we have links to our device, but through network analytics and entity resolution, we also have links to the same account. We also have enhanced our device with third-party data from Secure and Threat Metrics. So if I click on this, I can see some of the reason codes that Threat Metrics has sent into us about why this device is considered high risk. And we have a new device that's less than a week old. We have a browser anomaly, and again, now we're seeing that 3 local persona variations per day. So we have 3 people using the same device. Now, a shared device is not reason enough for us to block this transaction, block this customer, but it does paint a concerning picture when we see that this device is also being shared at the account level, the users on this account are sharing the same device. So now, let's go to our account level here. And what I want to see is, I want to see money movement. I want to see what money's moving, where our transactions are flowing. So I'm going to switch this to show our social and transaction links. And then I'm going to expand our transactions by one level. And when we do this, we now see the transactions that are moving in and out of this account. So every blue line here is indicating money movement. So we have money moving out, money moving out, money moving in. And we can see, if I click on this individual line and show transaction details, I can see the source or the amount on this account. So this transaction, $14,800. It's high, but it's not, maybe not horrible for this use case. This transaction, $10,000. Again, not super concerned with that one. And then if I check this transaction, $150,000. Now, if you remember when we looked at our customer details, this customer had an annual income of around $92,000, but then now we have a $150,000 transaction that is tied to this account. So, and this paired with the other concerning factors, like the fact that he is a PEP, so he is a higher risk customer. with the suspicious device and the other patterns of money movement on this account, this is concerning to us. So at this point in our investigation, we've kind of done what investigators traditionally spend the most amount of time on, right? So we've explored our network, we've traced money movement, we've reviewed multiple alerts across fraud, customer due diligence, high-risk customers, and AML transaction monitoring. And we've identified behaviors that not only individually matter, but when we take all of them together, is painting a really concerning picture to us. And so this is kind of where we've reached an important inflection point, and the investigator has to pause and ask, okay, so what does all of this actually mean, right? And this is where our investigations are traditionally going to slow down. And it's not because the data's not there, right? We have a ton of data. We have so many more tabs that we haven't even looked at because we have a 25-minute slot here to look at it, right? So taking all of this data and synthesizing it into a clear and defensible narrative is going to take time, and then this is exactly where investigations slow down and where we can augment this with generative AI. So if you remember, I said we were going to come back to our alert details tab here, and what I'm going to do is create an alert activity summary. So this alert activity summary, when I click generate here, is going to take all of the information that we have tied to this alert. So everything related through entity resolution in our network, all of the related alerts across fraud, customer due diligence, and anti-money laundering, and it's going to synthesize all of this data and give us a summary of what's happening in here. So Copilot is identifying that Len has triggered multiple alerts across a range of scenarios, and this spans from April 7th to April 8th. Now, this timing is going to matter to us because this is telling us that this is not a single isolated event, but is a concentrated pattern of activity over a very short time frame. We're seeing the alert patterns and activities. So we have high scoring alerts and moderate scoring alerts, and we have the trends that are happening with this. So you see we have rapid deposits that have totaled 6.4 million, followed by large withdrawals with 4 million. We saw that with our AML scenarios. We have foreign wire activity occurring on this, ATM usage across multiple states, and then we also have some insights at the bottom. So this is saying overall the alert history demonstrates persistent and varied high-risk activity, underscoring the need for continued monitoring and potential escalation. So what Copilot is going to be doing really well here is it's going to connect these behaviors into a pattern rather than leaving them as separate alert hits. And this is going to give us investigative clarity and help us to stitch these together automatically rather than us having to manually stitch together all of these seemingly distinct pieces, right? How does him being a politically exposed person play into the larger picture of what's happening here? And we don't just have to do this at the alert level, we can do this at our case level as well. So if we decide that this needs further investigation and warrants us creating a case, we can have this same level of summarization not only at the case level, but then we can also further that with narratives at the SAR level from a regulatory perspective, and then individual alerting scenarios from a fraud perspective as well. So to be clear, our investigators still making the decision, right? We're not automatically clearing alerts, we're not filing SARs, we're not autonomously making any decisions in what I have set up here. But what we are doing is dramatically reducing the time that it's going to take us to understand why the alert matters, to communicate a risk clearly, to document our findings consistently, and then defend these decisions both internally and externally. And this is kind of what we talk about when we talk about the power of FRAML on a single platform, because fraud and AML and CDD alerts should be investigated together. And when Copilot has access to this unified context, we can make decisions that reflect our risk profile across the enterprise, not just aligned to our single line of business. And when we share this data, we're able to use this and enhance our investigations, and that's what we mean by one platform and one view of financial crime that's going to be enhanced by Gen AI, but guided by our own human judgment. So I'm going to come back to the slides here for a moment. So, we've spent this time focusing on fraud and AML, but this way of thinking should not stop at just fraud and AML. What we're really talking about is something bigger than just FRAML. We're talking about integrated decisioning that occurs across the bank and across the enterprise. And when you strip it back, every bank is ultimately trying to do four things really well. They're trying to grow their bank, protect their bank, change their bank, and run their bank. And you've just seen how we protect the bank, right? We protect it from an onboarding perspective through doing our AML and fraud case investigations and trying to detect any suspicious activity or concerning behaviors that are occurring. That same decisioning foundation is also going to support growing our bank through better customer intelligence and next best action strategies, and then running and changing the bank by informing our enterprise risk, by stress testing and doing regulatory planning. And so at the center of all of this is a single integrated decisioning approach. And so that's where our risk, fraud, and compliance is not going to be siloed, but it's going to be treated as connected decisions across the enterprise. Because when we do that, not only can we make better informed decisions and seeing how a shared device from a fraud perspective is linked to a mule account from a money laundering perspective, and how that feeds into a broader network of enterprise level risk. And then we can continue to enhance our investigations through using tools like generative AI to link these seemingly unrelated or this data that we now no longer have to manually stitch together and can bring together in one unified way. So that's all I have for you guys today. If you have any questions, I think we have a couple minutes here. Otherwise, if I can't get to your question, I will be in the financial services booth. Hopefully you can't miss me. I don't know if I could have worn anything brighter. I'm also happy to continue the conversation after the conference if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn. And thank you for coming today. It was nice to chat with you guys.